This story comes from the pages of 1001 Nights, but it's more than a tale. It's an ancient account passed down for generations, and many believe it's based on true events. It begins with a hungry man in a net. What he finds that day at the edge of the sea is something no one has ever truly explained. But before we begin, if you're drawn to stories with mystery, meaning, and the otherworldly, to legends passed down as truth, then this is the channel for you. I share new stories each week, drawn from folklore, forgotten history, and strange events that linger at the edge of belief. So tap the like button and subscribe with all notifications on so you never miss what's next. Let's begin. Abdullah was a fisherman and had 10 children. His wife had just given birth, but he hadn't caught a single fish in over a week. That day, he fished until dusk, but he still caught nothing. As he started to walk home, he walked past the local bakery. He paused, not for bread because he did not have any money, but for kind of some smells. At that point, the baker saw him, and he comes out and he says, "Hey, Abdullah, still nothing?" Abdullah, shook his head. Baker handed him a loaf of bread and said, "Feed your family. Bring fish tomorrow. Or don't. You owe me nothing." But Abdullah didn't catch anything the next day, or the day after that. This continued for 40 days, but the baker still gave him bread every day to feed his family. On the 41st day, Abdullah thought, you know what? I'm not sticking with this usual spot where I fish at. I'm going to go up to the cliffs. I'm going to go to the rocks. I'm going to cast my net from there. We'll see what happens. Now, nobody ever fishes there. They say it's too dangerous. You can easily slip and fall into the ocean. Nobody dares do that. But he felt he had no other option. He throws his net in, and the first throw in, as he pulls at it, he feels something pull back really hard. He starts pulling it up. He thinks, what have I caught a seal? What is this? A giant tuna? But what he pulls up was none of those. There was a being inside, a man. He had translucent skin that was kind of blue-green. He had these long fingers with this webbing that was in between, connecting each finger together. His hair it seemed to flow in a way almost like how seagrass flows in the ocean, and his eyes were this deep, luminous green. They stared at each other for a period of time silently. Now, Abdullah still held the net tightly, so the seaman couldn't leave. Then, calmly, the seaman began to speak. "You haven't run. You're different." At that point, Abdullah's heart was pounding. He said, "If you let me go, perhaps we can help each other. I can bring you a gift from the ocean." So, after a tense pause, Abdullah nodded, and he cautiously released the net. Seaman jumps back into the ocean. Abdullah doesn't know if he's ever going to see him again, but the next day he comes and he brings some bread with him, and the seaman was already there, waiting patiently. So the seaman accepted the bread. He gobbled it up right away. "You did not try to hold me," he said gently. "You didn't bargain. That's rare." And then awkwardly, the seaman, because he's not used to walking on land, kind of got up on the rocks and came over and sat next to Abdullah. And he leans over, and in a very soft voice, he says, "Would you like to learn something few remember?" Abdullah agreed. "Yeah, sure." The seaman taught him stillness, how to sit without desire, to let go of thoughts, to accept the tides of life and death without clinging. And soon, Abdullah began to change. He brought bread each day, and the seaman taught him how to meditate, how to breathe. So they had this daily discipline. Just before dawn, they would meet each other. They would sit facing the sea. Their legs were crossed on the cool stone. Now, there were no chants, no rituals, only silence. Breathing in and breathing out. Watching their thoughts drift like clouds, letting go over and over again. "You must stop trying to reach the sea," the seaman once told him. You must dissolve the need to reach anything at all. And one day, without even knowing what had happened, Abdullah just let go, and the ocean opened. He descended into this hidden world of breathless wonder, this luminous city built from coral and gems, and the roofs almost looked like translucent jellyfish. The fish would swim almost as if they're going down roads. There was no war, no fear, only presence, only peace. When Abdullah returned to land, he didn't carry anything physical with him, but he profoundly changed. His movements were now much slower. He spoke softer. He just ate very simple meals. He laughed often. People noticed something's different about him. Now, first, they approached him for advice, and then they asked for leadership, calling him the man between worlds. They built a temple near the cliffs. There were gardens, a council house, a library. He accepted these with humility and would help guide the people. But over time, Abdullah's stillness kind of began to erode away. He just kind of started to forget, right? He became accustomed to these titles and people bowing to him. Now, he started to reshape the whole city, not to make it quiet, but to make it last. There were all these stone tablets that had his sayings engraved on them. There were archways with his name, Abdullah, over them. People would often wait in line. They'd wait for long periods of time for his wisdom, even when he had no wisdom to give. Gradually, he just meditated less and less, and then he stopped altogether. So first he told himself, I'm so busy. I'm giving so much for the people. Later, he just totally forgot about meditating. One morning, he walked past the bakery and didn't recognize the man who stepped out to greet him, the baker who had once fed his children. Abdullah just nodded politely and moved on. He spoke of letting go of attachments while inspecting statues of himself. He smiled, but the smile didn't seem to quite reach his eyes. Gradually, his visits with the seaman dwindled. One day, Abdullah and the seaman were sitting together on the rocks. You once released everything, the seaman said softly. You now grip your name as though it will save you. I'm building something that lasts, Abdullah insisted proudly. The seaman looked at him. Nothing eternal was ever built by grasping. He then turned and vanished into the waves. Years passed, and Abdullah's city grew greater. It flourished. Statues rose in his honor. He got older. He got stiffer. And he knew that his end of days were coming, so he built this elaborate tomb on the cliffs facing the ocean. And one night, he was walking alone along the cliffs toward the tomb. And then he saw the stone where he had first offered bread to the seaman. And he sat down and he just kind of whispered softly, I'm ready. Nothing answered. He closed his eyes and passed quietly. But his spirit did not rise. Instead, Abdullah felt this heavy pull downward, down into the shadowy waters. He opened his eyes, and all he could see was this endless grayness, chains of memories that were wrapped tightly around him. All of his statues, his gold, his fame. At this point, just the panic surged. And he reached upward desperately. High above, brilliant light broke through and then illuminated all of this darkness. And he thought, that's it, this is great, here we go. Then he saw the seaman himself. He was luminous, radiant, pure. The seaman had let go of everything. He no longer had form or attachment, and he merged effortlessly into the infinite brilliance. Then the light went away. Abdullah cried out, but no sound emerged. He struggled desperately to pull himself upward, but the weight of his desires, his memories, his fears were all pulling him downward. He watched helplessly as the seaman went away, and he was stuck deep in this murky gray pit. Nothing he valued mattered there. Everything he held became chains dragging him back. He wasn't descending into punishment or fire. It's just loneliness, regret, the unbearable truth that he had grasped life too tightly. And in the end, he teaches us you can meditate, you can serve, you can even build a kingdom in your name. But if you can't let go of legacy, can't let go of your ego, the illusion of control, you'll never cross into the place where freedom truly lives. Real peace doesn't come from what we carry, it comes from what we're willing to set down. And what he clung to was the weight that pulled him under. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And remember, not all chains look like chains. I'll see you in the next story.